Last week's climate change debate by the leaders was a great turning point, a really positive sign of climate change moving up the political and public agenda, and indicated what we've known for a long time, that having conversations about climate change is really crucial to personal and political changes. It was fascinating to see the majority of the political leaders debating the ins and outs of climate change in a way that we've never seen before. The previous two elections, climate change has virtually not been mentioned at all. So having this format, having this debate on public television at prime time is a really great sign that we're making, at long last, progress in the right direction. The discussion itself was fascinating. I mean, it's a great big issue that needs a lot of time and discussion to cover properly, but it was good to see that the politicians were asked and grappled with some of the really difficult questions. Well, we're now seeing how we have to translate the science a lot of us have known about into the reality for everyday life, for us as individuals, for those of us in the community, and for politicians who create the structures in which we operate and exist. So it at long last felt like less of a scientific discussion and more of a practical one, but we have far to go. It touched on some key issues. It was really interesting to see how all the politicians were vying to plant the most number of trees, for example, a really tangible thing that doesn't really impact on our lives. But when it came to more tricky discussions around diet and transport, you could see the difficulties and the very immature start of new policies that were there largely across the board. It was really interesting to see how those with constituencies in farming backgrounds really weren't keen to talk about a shift away from meat in our diets, and those with high levels of transport issues were also found it quite hard to talk in that space. What we saw was the authentic messengers coming through when it was on their topics. So if one of the politicians is well known for gardening, talking about gardening issues was really easy for them. And it was fascinating to see how some politicians who had been grappling with these issues could be the most authentic voice and discussion. I think overall, we know that the social science says that these conversations are critical to have. I don't think any of us think that it was a breakthrough in terms of political discourse and understanding, but the fact that the public were invited in and could hear politicians, their leaders, discussing the challenges ahead for our society is a really good sign. The key reason they did so is quite obvious, is that the public are really worried about this issue now. It's one of the highest concerns across the UK. It's a peak of concern compared with any other time we've seen. And what's really interesting is how that concern has been led by young people. And a lot of the politicians really know that their key voter base is concerned by this issue. So I think it says to all of us, social scientists, those who care about climate change, and those who are coming to the subject new, that talking about this issue is vital. Raising awareness about this issue is vital. But what's really critical now is turning the challenge into reality for us as politicians, as community leaders, or individuals in our lives.